You're listening to Discography Discussion, episode 164, Obituary, hosted by Dan Terry.
Then we can just take a picture of all of us wearing the mask, and it'll be the newest cover of the newest Sodom record.
Geoff Kane.
My kiddo has two World War II German gas masks. You can wear those.
And Joseph Wren.
I feel better now.
Presented by discussmetal.com. And if you thought 99 Ways to Die was not nearly enough, then you are ready for this episode of Discography Discussion. I am Joe. That is Dan. That is Geoff.
Yo.
Let's get this over with.
It wasn't that bad.
I mean, it was mostly bad.
Unfortunately, it was, which is... I wanted to have such a positive episode. Why do you guys just keep having me come back just to shit on bands? Seriously.
I don't know, man. It's one of those, like, even the really, really good moments in Obituary just makes me be like, wow, I should go listen to a band that just does that thing all the time. But I mean, Obituary has a certain appeal in that, like, that thing that they do, which is just chug endlessly and play solos that go nowhere and have a guy yell something into the microphone. If you signed up for that for 10 albums, then you're in heaven.
Well, this is what I would call the guitar player's band. Because
there's guitars in it. They're kind of a thrash band sometimes, but...
Yeah, it's all about, like Dan said, it's about the chug and it's about the solos and it's about nothing else, in my opinion. Mainly it's because I just don't like John's voice. It's so hard for me to listen to his voice.
Well, I mean, let's get into it. There's
well, shit, people say that about me. That's why I'm not on the podcasts all the time anymore.
Absolutely. I mean, I get that all the time. A dude sent us a message the other day that's all, you guys should stop talking to that guy that doesn't like He Is Legend.
Oh, did they really? That's awesome.
I was like, you mean Geoff? Oh, him? I don't know. He's probably dead in a ditch somewhere. Talk bad about He Is Legend. Come on.
Yeah, I'm dead in a ditch somewhere because I'm considered an essential employee, just like Dan. So we're...
Yeah, but I actually am essential. Yours is kind of questionable.
Yeah, mine is so people can still fly jet planes. Yeah, why do we need that during coronavirus? I don't know, but it happens.
I repair machines that help people breathe. So, yeah, slight
and I build flight simulators for trainers for the F-15 program for the Air Force. Well, so it's cool shit, but why the fuck do I need to be doing that right now? There's no need for that.
This is the part of the conversation where I make a joke about let the bodies hit the floor.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Well, I got a better one. Don't worry. Well, before we talk about Geoff's extended leave of absence in a ditch with a shovel, I'm going to take this time to say thank you to everyone for listening to the podcast. Thank you for listening and for subscribing. If you are not a subscriber, then you can find everything Discography Discussion at discussmetal.com. We are on Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, so if you have an Amazon Echo or a Google Home, you have no excuse. Ask it to play the latest episode of the Discography Discussion podcast, and it will. We're also on Facebook and on Twitter at Discuss Metal. Be sure to like, favorite, and subscribe. It really helps us out. It lets us know you're listening, and now Dan is going to tell us all about 5-star reviews.
Well, I don't really have any 5-star reviews to report, but I do have to report that you missed a couple, Joe. You missed iHeartRadio, you missed Pandora. There's just every single day there's a new place that you can listen to Discography Discussion. There's really nothing that you can do. I would say it's like a virus, but I feel like that'd be in really bad taste. Speaking of...
Here's the difference. We are a well-intentioned virus.
We are a well-intentioned virus. That's true.
Okay, come on. I gave you the lead in. You're not going to do anything with it?
It's fine, dude. It's Zayo. We all love Zayo.
All right, yay!
We all love Zayo. Hi, Scott. Yeah, we'll just pull Scott in on this and have him tell us. That's it. I ought to text Scott right now and be like, just give me one sentence for Obituary, and I'll just we'll read that on the show.
The Fear's my favorite Zayo record.
Yeah, say why we're wrong and he's right because he's a guitar player. That'd be my first guess.
Well, Joe's a guitar player, and he hasn't had a whole lot of great things to say just as of yet. But to get back to my point about numbers going up is that we've been at a consistent 5,000 downloads a month for the last year and a half. That's incredible, guys. I mean, when we started doing this podcast, I don't think myself or Geoff or Joe ever really thought about it in context of those types of numbers. And it's been incredible, the amount of people that have heard this podcast and all the different areas that you can do or that you can listen to it. And so for that, I just want to say thank you to all the listeners that continue to download the episodes, that share them with their friends, and they get into arguments with us, they get into disagreements with us. Like, that's kind of like one of my favorite things about doing this podcast is I like to discuss metal with people. And it's always very respectful. There's not a whole lot of name calling, but it's just people are like, yeah, you know what? I think you guys are awesome. I don't always agree with you, but you guys always entertain me, and so I just want to say thanks to all those people.
Oh, that was sweet.
It was. It's like it's the nicest I'm going to be on this episode.
I was going to say.
So get ready,
Dan. I think that's the nicest you've been in like the last month.
That's the nicest I've been in the last 5 years. I don't know. Maybe it was that coffee I was drinking. No, it's just It's just generic Keurig coffee. So
Dan, tell me about Obituary.
Obituary is an American death metal band with quotation marks around the death metal, and they're from Tampa, Florida, where most good death metal bands are. I'd like to say there's something in the water, but I think they might have been drinking Florida poop water and not regular water.
The vocals sound like that.
They started in 1984, and they were called Executioner. And then there was another band called Executioner, so they changed their name in 1986 to Executioner with just an X. So more Charles Xavier and less like an actual executioner, because there was a thrash band that was called that, and they didn't want anybody to think they were thrash, but they kind of are, because I mean, if you listen to their records, they really like Celtic Frost, like a lot. And in 1998, they decided to change their. I'm sorry, in 1988. Sorry, they changed their name to Obituary officially. And they put out a record called Slowly We Rot in 1989. And that was kind of their... I mean, they have like 4,000 demos. We're not going to talk about those. Nobody's got the time. And I, to be honest with you, I probably won't ever listen to another Obituary record anyway. So, here we are.
It was the fucking 80s. Everybody had cassettes. It was a thing. Slowly We Rot, 1989.
I'm going to take it back just a quick second.
Ladies and gentlemen, Geoff is taking it back.
For a little bit of useless trivia for anybody who's interested. The other Executioner, do you guys know what evolved out of that?
What's that?
Anal.
Nice.
Shout out to Matt Nas.
Another terrible band.
Yeah, so that, but it's Seth Putnam was all tongue-in-cheek on purpose, though. The guy who is the mastermind behind that. God rest his soul. He's another one that's not with us anymore. But yeah, I just thought it would be fun just to say, 2 years after Executioner changed their name to Obituary, the other Executioner quit and became, Seth went on to make Anal. Can I say that, Joe? Can I say Anal?
I don't think he's been able to say.
I don't know how many times you'll get away with it, but I think at least once.
The majority of Obituary would consist of John Tardy, their vocalist, Don Tardy, his brother, was the drummer, and Trevor Perez, the rhythm guitarist. He's the guy that I'm going to take the most issue with in this episode.
As you should.
They had, some notable members. They had Alan West was their kind of main guitar shredder for a while. He kind of popped in and out of the band, over, in various points in their career. And then there's one shining gem, one beautiful thing that happened in 1990 where they had James Murphy as their lead guitar player. And those were good times. That was back when everything was good and happy and wholesome. But he unfortunately is never appeared on an Obituary thing ever again.
Yeah. Well, it was Frank Watkins too.
Yeah, Frank Watson. Watkins, who also passed away.
Yeah, but he was also in Gorgoroth.
2015. He was in Gorgoroth, yep. And then their other lead guitar player from 2007, 2011, Ralph Santola, also passed away in 2018.
Fuck, I hate to make a terrible joke, but the name of the band Obituary is pretty fucking prophetic.
I was going to ask if this was like a Spinal Tap situation.
No, but you know, it's really weird. They had Steve DiGiorgio play bass for them in 2010 live.
Did they really?
You ever heard the term overqualified?
Yeah, no shit.
That is wow. That's I don't know, man. That's like having Chuck Schuldiner playing your punk band, you know? Like,
Chuck was a professional. He would have done it, and he would have done it well.
It would have been incredible. Yeah, I'd like to hear that. Well, speaking of things that I kind of like to hear, Slowly We Rot.
Yeah, there was actually some gems on here.
Hey,
Go ahead. You're going to tell me how awesome the whole thing is, I'm sure.
Well, tracks 1 through 8 are awesome. So the first 8 tracks on this record were a demo that they recorded in 1988, and they shopped it around to labels. And then whenever they finally got signed to Road Racer Records, which is a offshoot of Roadrunner, Roadrunner was like, yeah, you're going to need more tracks than that. Because this record's only like 35 minutes long. So you imagine tracks 1 through 8, you're probably looking like a 20-minute kind of deal. So they went ahead and added a few songs to it. And it's kind of weird because you can definitely notice that there's a production difference in the middle of the record.
Absolutely.
Or like towards the end of it. And I always thought that was kind of weird because I thought that the first 8 tracks kind of established a certain tone, and then it's like kind of gone at the end of it. But this is probably one of my favorite Obituary records. Not because it necessarily stands out from the others, but it just seems more gutsy, more like the riffing is very, very, very rooted in thrash. It's like I'm almost a mixture of thrash and doom metal, which doesn't sound like it would go together, like one being very high energy and one being very low energy. But you know, they're the first band that I remember hearing that really tried that. And so you've got some really, 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 really great solos by Alan West. And you've got Don Tardy as the drummer, who is pretty good. He's definitely not like the best death metal drummer you're ever going to hear. And then you've got John Tardy on vocals, and the vocals, actually, this is probably one of the only Obituary albums I'm going to say this is. I thought the vocals sounded pretty sick on this record. Just very, very unhinged, very growly, very, I wouldn't say brutal. I don't think he's ever been brutal. But just very growly, very like a psychopath is on the microphone. And for whatever reason, this worked. And I want to be clear, it worked on this record.
Yeah, it did work on this record. Like, I could fucking listen to Gates to Hell all day long.
Oh, yeah.
I love that fucking track, man. But yeah, it's primal. His vocals are primal. It's not, I don't know. It just sounds, like you said, it sounds like a psychopath. It just sounds like a crazy dude on the mic who is just spitting, man, just going crazy. And that's what makes it, that's what makes it good. The later stuff just, I don't know, it's boring.
We'll get into it.
Yeah, but this was awesome. The vocals on this was actually, even with that, this is still probably a solid third place for me as far as out of my favorite Obituary albums.
I kind of think that Obituary sounds better when they sound a little bit less professional. And I think that in this particular case, it works because again, it's just that primal. It's dudes playing in a garage. These songs written in a garage, probably terrible demo versions of these songs written in a garage, recorded in a garage. The guitar tone on this record is really, it's almost so bassy at times that it's like hypnotic. Like it's like a sick feeling. It's like having a feeling of nausea in your stomach that you just can't quite get rid of. It's like that feeling between being tipsy and drunk, where you feel like a little sick, but you don't feel like it. That's squarely where the guitar tone in this record lands. And I thought it's really interesting that this record is as heavy as it is, considering it was recorded in standard tuning on Fender Stratocasters.
It's all about the amp, dude. It doesn't matter how low it's tuned.
Yeah. Well, it's just interesting that there's an Obituary record in standard. Like if somebody told me that, I'd be like, "You're full of it." Like this is definitely a drop D band, Like
the thrash metal roots are obvious. These guys were fans of Slayer, Venom, I'm sure Metallica, and insert the names of the other big four bands. They want to play fast, but then they also want to dirge a little bit. And yes, the vocals do work. They're not necessarily good, but this is the late 80s where this is what thrash sounded like. And I like it because it has that classic thrash sound of, is the music going to be good? Are the vocals going to be good? And if either one is not, do they work together? That's the equation of classic thrash.
Well, yeah, and like vocally, I know they're trying to go for more of a death metal thing. And I would say vocally, John Tardy on this record doesn't sound all that different than like a Chuck Schuldiner on Scream Bloody Gore or Leprosy. This is before death metal vocals were just Cookie Monster, you know. They hadn't really carved that out, so you can chalk a lot of that up to just it being the time and people trying to figure out like how to amp up the vocal intensity. The weird thing is, though, is this band never published, like John Tardy never published his lyrics, and that's something that we're gonna follow throughout the band. So normally this is where it'd be like, oh my god, read these lyrics, they're so messed up. I have no idea what they are, and I can't really. Sometimes I can understand him, but the times I can understand him, I think his vocals sound notably worse than when I can't understand him.
So are you saying that he's not saying anything?
It has been theorized by a lot of people that listen to Obituary that he may not actually be saying anything. And if he is saying something, it may just be like stream of consciousness. You know, and I've never done it. I told myself I was going to do this week where I was going to pull up a live video of the band playing a song and then listen to the album version and see if they match, you know, like see if he's saying the same thing. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he wrote lyrics and performed them, but just never published the lyrics, because there are certain musicians out there that are afraid that if they put too much of their stuff out there, that somebody's going to steal it, or they were just really, really, really weak lyrics and he just didn't want to publish them, you know. All that's possible. Now you can go on like Dark Lyrics or a website like that and pull up their lyrics, but it's all just what fans think he's saying. It's not It's not word for word. So it's a very interesting situation where we may actually have somebody that's not saying anything. So, normally I get so mad when Joe says that on an episode, but in this particular case, he might actually be right. So, we'll just leave it there. Like I said, I'm going to give him credit and say I think he is actually saying lyrics. But if he is, I do think that they probably just are like stream of consciousness.
Yeah, I was going to say, he said it once and doesn't remember what the fuck it is that he said afterwards. In other words, stream of conscious.
But that's not to say, because like in a song like Slowly We Rot, like that song actually has some semblance of a chorus, you know, and I think it would be very noticeable if he said something else, you know. Well, yeah, the only time he's saying out like "Slowly We Rot," you know, like I hear that.
I understand that. I'm just saying that outside of choruses, you know, I think he could change it every fucking time and nobody would know. That's all I'm trying to say.
And I don't think 80s thrash fans cared.
No, they were there for the sound and for the atmosphere and to kick ass and take names.
Well, and this record has all the, like on paper, it looks like a classic death metal record in the sense that, you know, it came out in 1989 on Roadrunner Records or Road Racer Records, and it was produced by Scott Burns at Moore Sound Recording Studios in Tampa, Florida. Like those are pretty much the key ingredients to being a classic death metal band. And I don't think that they were that on this record necessarily. I think this is a great debut because I think they were original here. They were doing something different than what a lot of their contemporaries were doing. Am I going to say that it holds a candle to like Leprosy or Scream Bloody Gore? Like not even close. Or even like Altars of Madness by Morbid Angel. You know, like those were like really good death metal bands, and Obituary was just kind of like trying a thing over here. And I think largely it succeeds here. I want to be very specific when I say these things. Like it worked this time. Like this is a banger of a record. If you buy one Obituary record, definitely buy the next one, Cause of Death. But this one, if you have money for two, get Slowly We Rot.
I would say if it was money for three, but
okay. Well, I mean that's fair.
But that's just because I have it third place.
There you go.
1990, Cause of Death is a giant eyeball in the sky.
Well, it's an eye-opening experience in a good way.
Yeah, it's actually it's the cover of an H.P. Lovecraft book or a compilation of his stories that this artwork was put on. And if you guys want to know an interesting little factoid, this album cover was supposed to be the album cover for Sepultura's Beneath the Remains.
That is correct.
That is badass.
Yeah, and like in that context, I'd love to see this cover artwork on that record. Not to say that the cover artwork that they settled with, they basically just got a different painting by the same artist to do the cover of that record. But I remember Igor Cavalera was like really upset with Roadrunner Records because Cavalera had a tattoo of the cover on his arm.
Yep.
So like that's kind of messed up. Like that the label just decided that nah, it's fine. So that's a little frustrating. And by a little, I mean you had it tattooed on your body, and then it's not like the actual thing.
Is this record as black death metal as the internet wants me to believe it is?
It's not black at all. I mean, other than the Celtic frost worship that is prevalent on every Obituary release, at least on the early albums. This record is absolutely a classic death metal release, and I got to give it to them. I didn't think that the boys could do it, but they definitely got some help. They pulled in James Murphy, who I believe had just left Death, and because James Murphy played on the Spiritual Healing record by Death.
That is correct.
So, like, if you're in Death, even if it's 5 minutes, you're, probably better than most of the dudes in Obituary.
Hey, let's not forget that James was in Testament as well.
He was in Testament as well. Yeah, that's correct. Oh, Testament.
One of these days,
it's
buddy.
Almost time. It's almost time.
We're going to get it done. So, you know how I talked about the guitar tone and Slowly We Rot being kind of like mesmerizing or hypnotic in a way? Cause of Death, it's even more so. And this record actually is in drop tuning, which gives it that kind of heavier, beefier sound. John Tardy is John Tardy. He's doing the John Tardy thing throughout all this. Because he can't even say chopped in half clearly. He's just chopped in half. Like what is that? But I don't mind it so much because this is absolutely like the idea they had with Slowly We Rot, but with a budget. And a good lead guitar player.
The lead guitar helps anytime you're doing anything remotely thrash. And this is 1990 when the biggest record in the world was about to be the Black Album. Yeah,
guitar tone is killer on this. I mean, this is tied for first place on my favorite Obituary albums, and I've gotten to the point now that I've learned to try to do my best to look past shitty singing because it happens a lot. Or not really singing, but you get my point.
Well, the album sounds dark. It sounds like what they're trying to give me with the album cover. In my opinion, classic thrash albums and pretty much anything metal, it used to be about the entire product. It was the music, the tone, and the album cover, and the image of the band, which was usually ugly. This succeeds at doing the same thing that a Rain in Blood by Slayer does by giving me this dark imagery and then giving me this dark presentation. Except this is slowed down, more of a dirge, whereas Slayer is trying to be as fast as humanly fucking possible.
I think what's interesting about this is that the guitar tone is very dense. And then you have James Murphy come in with a knife, and he cuts through all of that density with his cleaner solos. And it adds a little bit of much needed melody to this whole project. It's very clean. It just it feels right. There's really no other way to describe it.
No, I agree. You need to have that. I guess you could say harmony almost. You need the yin to the yang. That's what I always like about metal is the extremes of it, and having that on with the guitar solos on how clean and crisp it is with just the guitar tones overall. I mean, on this album and then one other album that we're going to get to in particular, I just love the fuck out of it. I'm not the most technical of the guys on the show, obviously. I think most people realize that. So I just go more off of feel, and this album does a very good job of giving me that mental imagery of what I'm looking for when it comes to early 90s metal. It just feels right to me. That maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, but this particular album just hits that sweet spot for me, even with the vocals that I don't particularly care for.
Well, yeah, I mean it's got kind of this atmosphere where when you're listening to it, you know it's a classic release. And considering the rest of this band's discography, you almost wouldn't think they'd be capable of putting out a classic record, but it hits on all the right cylinders in just the right way, and it comes in, at less than an hour, depending on if you have bonus tracks or not, which, I mean, if you buy this record today, it'll probably have like some demo songs on it. But tracks 1 through 9, it's not overly long. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It is just it's what Obituary is trying to create, which is basically a belch from hell, and they achieve that on this record.
Yeah, I think something got stuck in his throat while he was belching.
Possible.
Yeah.
He sounds a lot like, and this is a weird comparison, but if anybody that knows this show knows we listen to a lot of Christian metal too, or at least I do. He sounds a little bit like Roger Martinez from Vengeance Rising. I know Geoff didn't care for that either. You
know what? You mentioned that you are right, and you're right. I didn't care for Vengeance Rising vocals either.
I think Roger's vocals were better than John's, but
that's not saying much. That's not
I know, it's like comparing a bag of piss to a bottle of puke, right?
I'd definitely go for the bag of piss. No question. That was easy. So I guess that was Roger Martinez, right?
Right. But I don't know, man. Like, I love this record so much that as we go on in the discography, this record and even Slowly We Rot being so good made me say things like when I'm listening to the next records, like, it's not that bad. And as I've been famously quoted for saying, not that bad is not a good descriptor of anything.
1992, the end complete. Not quite, but I appreciate your effort.
Yeah, as Dan would say, this album is not that bad. See, it sounds better when I say it, but the sentiment remains.
I'm in pain listening to this record.
Yeah, I didn't care for this one at all.
It starts off so promising. It sounds like Cause of Death just kept going. But then the lead guitar starts, and you realize, no, it's not the same thing. Then you look down and realize, I've only been listening to this record for 15 seconds.
I'm not going to lie to you. I can't tell you how many times that's happened to me listening to this band. Because, like, I've got my Music Bee up, right? And I'll finish one
Shout
of
out
their
to
records.
Music Bee.
I'll finish one of their records, and it'll start going into the next one, and I won't realize it.
Yeah, you don't know where it begins
like,
and where it ends. It's frustrating.
Yeah, I'm like track 7 into the next record, and I'm like, oh my God, is this ever going to be over? Never a good sign when you've got 10 albums to get through. The Incomplete, though, here's the nice part of it. This is their first major misstep. Every band has it. Like, every band goes through that. Living Sacrifice has non-existent, but then they make up for it with Inhabit immediately right after, There's a lot of bands out there, or like even look at like Cannibal Corpse, who had some missteps earlier on in their career than they did later. This is where their formula really starts to fall apart. And it's happening this early in their career. This sounds like the same band that wrote the last 2 records, but they've run out of creative ideas. This is kind of phoned in.
It sounds like the B-sides.
And yeah, they went into it being like, well, we got to put out another Obituary record. So what does that mean? That means chuggy guitar. That means, some slower parts, some slower, doomier parts, whatever John's doing vocally, all the elements are there, but they're not being utilized. It's literally like the creativity is gone. The sound remains the same, but the creativity is not there. And this is where you start noticing that, well, Obituary, kind of all their stuff kind of starting to sound the same. The difference is that they could have that sound on Cause of Death, but it'd be creative and fun. Whereas, I mean, if you consider listening to this kind of music fun, this is just that sound without the creative choices that made those records great. I will say it's not terrible. I just can't think of anything really nice to say about it other than it's another Obituary record. But with it only being the 3rd album, I'm willing to give it a pass just because, like, you know what? We all get there. Sometimes we have a creative slump.
There's a stereotype for bands that are not as successful as, say, a Metallica or a Megadeth, and sometimes those successful bands fall into this as well. The third album is either a slump or it's where you excel, and most of the time, the third record is when the slump starts. To quote something that I've heard Dan say for almost 30 years at this point, you've had your entire life to write your first record. Your second record is the real test of whether or not you are a creative person and can actually put together decent songs. But the third record will answer the question if you've learned anything along the way. Because even if you fail on the second record, the third record can get better. And in this case, it does not get better compared to the other two.
It doesn't get better. And part of it, too, is because of you having another lineup change. For continuity's sake, that can help with creativity to a certain point. Like whenever you have members that mesh well, and you want to be able to have that, by this time. Whenever you have people dropping in and out, that normally means there's more friction than what is required for the creative process, because you have to have some friction in the creative process. But for members to pop up and drop out, that generally means that there's more to it than what we probably know.
It's probably an ego thing.
Well, I don't even know necessarily that, but whenever you have a pair of brothers, that's where I go to first. I'm like, well, there's already two yeses or two nos, because they're brothers first, they're band members second. So there could be that. I don't, and they've been in the band this whole time. It's not like there has been conflict amongst siblings. So I'm guessing these siblings are on a team. And, I'm probably, making shit up where there's nothing to be made up. But that's just where my brain goes. That's the first place that I start to think about, okay, well, why are all these other guys dropping in and out? That's the first place my brain goes. And then when you go and you find out the rhythm guitarist is the guy who writes all the music, well, then you have three yeses. And then that fourth guy is always going to be the odd man out.
Yeah. James Murphy really added a lot to Obituary. Although in reality he didn't really. So that's something that we didn't really talk about on Cause of Death, was that James Murphy came into the band and basically just played the parts that Alan West had wrote before he left the band. So instead of, and I don't even know how much Alan West really writes in the band, but he basically wrote his stuff like he would normally participate. And then he left. So what they had James Murphy come in is he just came in and added a whole bunch of leads and solos to what was already there. And a lot of people say that, Cause of Death may not be considered the classic that it is without that.
Well, that's the classic thrash move of you have the rhythm guitarist who writes everything, and then the lead guitarist comes in and just puts down the solos. But the consumer doesn't necessarily hear that.
So here's something else that I want people to think about, is that most of the stuff and on track listings, if you start to go through and you look at who gets credit on everything, almost all of it is going to be says Perez or Tardy.
Yeah.
Or some combination of those three people. So I don't know, how much Alan West, is really a part of the equation, at least on the earlier stuff. Maybe things changed, and it's just hard to find because I don't have liner notes or anything like that, because I didn't collect Obituary stuff back in the day.
That is an old school ego move, though. All of the classic rock records, and even going back further to like the 50s with the standards, and back when every pop song was recorded 3 or 4 different ways by 3 or 4 different people, and they were all played on the radio or on TV, who was in charge because their name was on the track. How many years, and we still have it, did every Metallica record, 90% of the songs said Ulrich Hetfield?
Yep.
But modern musicians, and I think the Doors did this first, who wrote the songs? The band did. Because nobody's trying to steal the spotlight of, I'm the guy that does everything. So this is probably just going with the trend. I'm not going to say that it was an ego thing, but when you do that, it's an ego thing. When you as an individual, have to claim a piece of the band as a whole, you're basically saying, I am the band. Hi, Dan.
I would say really that, I mean, if you can look, I mean, even if you look on the various websites that post kind of the credits, everything on the Incomplete, I mean, there's Tardy, West, Perez, Tardy, Perez, Tardy, Perez, Tardy. This was a very collaborative effort. Alan West is back on this record. And really, one of the issues that I have with it more than anything is that, you know, same studio, same producer, Scott Burns, more sound. But for whatever reason, this record sounds a lot more flat. Like, it doesn't have that Florida poop water muddiness that that Slowly We Rot had.
It sounds like they didn't try as hard.
Or they were just trying something new. They like, because it's mixed like a mainstream, like it's engineered to sound like a mainstream metal record, and I would imagine this is probably really high selling based on the success of their previous records. I just think they came to the table and they just didn't have much. You know, it just didn't hit the right way. So the material is unspectacular, and the recording quality is trying to sound more modern. But whenever you try to make something sound more modern, it can lose some of the griminess. And in a band like Obituary, the griminess is the key, because a lot of the time, this band is more successful at creating a mood and a vibe necessarily than they are at writing great songs. And that can become very evident when you strip away that atmosphere and you're relying strictly on the material. And if the material doesn't cut it, it doesn't cut it. And so you end up with kind of a boring record. I let it go, though, you know, for the most part, because I did actually really like the follow-up to this.
I did too.
1994, World Demise.
So this one is the other record I have that's tied for my favorite.
Okay.
And it is all about the tone, man. It is sick on this album. Love it.
It is, and it's notably different. So like where I say that the production on the last record sounded kind of flat and a little bit like uninspired, this one takes that idea and goes in a totally different direction with it, where this obviously does sound clean. It doesn't sound like Florida poop water. It sounds like it sounds more cold and kind of biting, and obviously more like almost more hardcore in a way, where it's not as thick in a traditional death metal, you know, because like if you go back and listen to Cause of Death, that lives strictly in death metal land, whereas this was obviously the band trying to modernize, and some people have even used the word urbanize a little bit more. And I think the cover actually gives away kind of what they were going for, where you've got, you know, a big industrial zone and smokestacks everywhere. You know, it's going for a more, you're not out in the jungle in a cabin getting hacked to death by a serial killer. Now, maybe you're just working a dead-end job and you're getting more angry every single day you work it as you breathe in black smoke. You know what I mean? Like, it's got that sort of vibe to it.
Yeah, and you've gone from Dead by Dawn to... Dead by Lunchtime. Dead by Dawn. That's
Lunchtime. Nice.
Dead by Dawn. That's Evil Dead reference for anybody who wants to see an awesome 80s horror flick. Evil Dead 1 and 2 and Army of Darkness. All that shit's good.
I don't know if I'd be disappointed if I was a fan back in the late 80s and the early 90s. But listening to these records sequentially, as we do to prepare for this podcast, the End Complete was too much dirge. It was too slow for what I'm expecting when I listen to this band. World Demise starts right off with Don't Care, and the pace is just a little bit closer to what it was in Cause of Death, and that helps this record. This band is playing black and death metal, essentially. Old school. It's basically thrash. It's basically punk. The vocals are growled or yelled, and that's all they are. So why would I want that to be slow? The dirge doesn't work for me in that example. And the End Complete was all dirge. This is a little bit more attitude, and I like that.
Yeah, they've injected a little bit of hardcore into their sound, especially into the guitar tone, which I think works really, really well, especially for 1994. where you run the risk of just sounding like a band that never got out of the 80s. And this is one of the notable few examples of Obituary modernizing their sound and it actually being relatively successful.
Agreed.
This is fantastic.
Yeah, and this is, even though I'm not a fan of his vocals, this is where I think the music matches his vocals the best on this album, personally. It's when he's using this particular vocal styling. Because Slowly Rewrought, we can't use that as an example because his vocals are different on that. It's pretty much the same from Slowly Rewrought after that and moving forward. His vocals are pretty steady on as far as what he sounds like. And this fits well for me. And I minded his vocals the least on this album, I think, if that's a way to put it. And musically speaking, I thoroughly enjoyed this album quite a bit, actually.
This was the last one that I really liked because I don't think anybody's even prepared for what's coming. But like, it's the grooves are so on point on this record, dude. Like when Tardy comes in there and he's like, just like his brother's laying down a nice double bass, and the guitars are grooving out, and Tardy is singing whatever it is he does, screaming or whatever, but he's doing it like almost rhythmically. Like there's almost a little bit of rap influence in there. Like he sounds like a real vocalist probably for like the first time on this record. Like I think he tried really hard, and I would even go as far to say, and I would apologize if he's listening to this, but like I would go as far as to say as he probably had a little bit of help with this one. Like people sitting down and being like, look, you can't just do what you've done on the past 3 records over this. Like the material's too good for you to do that. You're going to have to start actually blending with the musical output. You're going to have to start blending with the musical output better.
Yeah, well, it definitely worked. I had the least amount of complaints I had with his vocals on this. I mean, so yeah, I'm down with it. I love the crap out of this. I really did. If this is what they sounded like all the time, if they made 10 albums of this, I would probably be okay. Unfortunately, it's not 10 albums of just this.
In a perfect world, they broke up after this and are remembered as the classic band that they are.
Yep.
Are we ready for Back from the Dead?
No, but we're going to anyway.
1997. So who wants to tell Joe what changed? Did they go to a different studio? Did they get a different guitar player? What happened?
Scott Burns is no longer there.
I don't know, man. You get all the guys together. You know what we need? We need to go hardcore, because that's the thing that's on the rise. We listen to the New York hardcore scene. It is going crazy right now. All these bands, hip hop's on the rise. We modernized on the last record, but we got to keep it going, baby. We got to modernize. It's been 3 years. We got to get a record out. Let's just go straight punk hardcore. But like, we'll still throw some solos in there every now and again to make the old fans happy. Oh, Back from the Dead. Where do I even begin? Like, this sounds like a New York hardcore band, which would be fine if it was a New York hardcore band. You've got a band that's playing, they keep a punk pace, or the slower hardcore punk pace. They're throwing a lot more groove into it, but everything is considerably slowed down. It lacks energy, which is a key ingredient in hardcore. So like, you guys didn't even do that right. And then John Tardy comes in and starts yelling over it, just like it's like Slowly We Rot again. And none of the pieces fit together. It's almost like John Tardy's coming in and singing on these to try to save it, but everybody sounds tired. It's like they didn't get enough sleep before they went in and recorded it.
I like this one.
You like it?
There is nothing good about it from a thrash metal perspective, but it succeeds at being a hardcore punk album.
No, it doesn't.
I didn't say it was good. I said it succeeds. The band plays down pick, power chords. It all sounds the same. The drummer's playing fast and the vocalist is just belting into the microphone. It sounds like a punk record. It doesn't sound like a very good one.
Punk records have energy. This has no energy at all.
Yeah, it's lethargic. So I see what you're saying. They're attempting to do it, but they're not. I don't think they're succeeding at doing it.
Yes, it fails because it's Obituary, and it's not a punk record, but it sounds like one. It's just not very good.
I can say there's influences there, but I don't think it actually is. I think they try to take that style and put their own spin on it. It just didn't work. That's all.
This is a horrible attempt to jump onto a trend. This is not the Obituary that anybody that bought this record signed up for. Like at all. Like it's a what were we thinking moment. Like what would possess you to do this when your fan base is predominantly metal fans? Back in 1997, do you know what metal fans hate? Hardcore. And they hate punks. They like metal fans like techie music, which I mean, it's not that Obituary is ever going to win any awards for being a technical band, because they are not, nor have they ever been. But this is just not what any of their fan base was asking for. And maybe they didn't care because they thought, well, maybe we'll get a new fan base. But it's like, I could listen to this, or I could go listen to like a good hardcore band. And on the flip side, I could listen to this, or I could go listen to a good death metal band. There were plenty of those in 97. So like on both fronts, it fails. It fails at what it was trying to accomplish, and it fails at being an Obituary record. It's just failure. And I think that the zombies on the cover are very fitting as to what we've got here. They're phoning this in. This is going through the motions. It's going to get a whole lot worse before it gets any better.
Yeah, I think this is them phoning it in, thinking, hey, you know what? If we prove that if we adapt our style, you know, it'll sound good. People will buy our shit. So whatever's popular, let's check it out. Let's do it. And like you said, I just don't think I don't know, maybe they got cocky or what, but the effort just didn't sound like it was there. You know, you can't make an album without effort, though. I mean, so I'm sure that, you know, they're trying. It just didn't feel as if they were 100% there. And maybe they weren't 100% on the same pages. Who knows? But it could even be, you know, record label saying, hey, you guys, you know, if you want to stay on our record label and make some money, this is what's popular. I need you guys to make a hardcore album. I mean, that shit happened then, and it still happens all the fucking time. You got the corporate bigwigs telling you, hey, this is what I need to sound like. So that, you know, something like that could have happened too. I mean, I'm sure there's interviews out there, you know, stating why there was the shift. Unfortunately, with the I didn't get to do my homework like I normally do because everything's so crazy with this coronavirus, and I haven't had time because I'm working like stupid hours every day. But I'm sure there's something out there. So if anybody out there finds something, post it and let us know if we're wrong, if we're right, or if you got some more info to take us further down the rabbit hole. We're happy to do so.
8 years go by. Nothing from Obituary. In 2005, we would get frozen in time. What happened for those 8 years? Discuss Metal Dan.
Well, they meandered on like the rotting corpse of a band that they were for about another year. They put out a live album called Dead, which is kind of funny, I guess. Kind of.
Wait a second. They were back from the dead and then they were dead?
Yeah, and then they were dead, yes. And not live, but dead. You get it? You get it, Joe? It's dead, and we're Obituary. Get it? We're dead, because we're Obituary. Okay, that joke's gone. They went on a hiatus for 6 years. Not even a hiatus. They basically just broke up the band. They're like, okay, Obituary's gone about as far as they can go, and we're done. Probably a good decision. I would say about 2004 or so, I started hearing rumblings that Obituary was back and that they were going to be putting on a new record, and they were totally going to go back to their old style. They're done with that, you know, Back from the Dead stuff. They're going to come back and be the Obituary fans' Obituary. So we get this record.
Frozen in Time, 2005. So they're going back to their old sound? Does that include bringing back some of their old songs?
I mean, sort of.
This record opens with Redneck Stomp, which I love, and there's something to be said for the lead vocalist of this band and whether or not he's actually saying anything, because this song is an instrumental. It's an instrumental rhythm guitar sludge fest, and there are no vocals. It is also the top song on most streaming services. So clearly the fans of this band don't fucking care what that guy's saying.
I would imagine, and as I found out doing this podcast, most death metal fans don't really care what's being said. This sounds like Back from the Dead. Like, not really. Like, I mean, there are traces of the old Obituary sound in there. They've got the classic lineup. You know, they're Obituary, and they throw in a little bit more of that sped up thrash, but it basically sounds less like a return to form and more like we're just picking up where we left off. And whereas I think that certain songs like On the Floor sound pretty cool, Slow Death is pretty cool. For the most part, this is where I think that Obituary is still showing that like they're not the most creative band in the world, and that some people were probably really happy with this because it was, you know, John Tardy screaming over some slowish riffs. Like, it's decidedly mid-paced, and it sounds like a throwback record in 2005, meaning that like they sound dated, but they sound 90s dated. They don't sound like classic late 80s, early 90s death metal dated. And I think that's largely the problem with it. This thing just bores me to tears, man. And it's only 34 minutes long. And what bums me out about it the most is that like the cover artwork for this record is amazing. Like it's got a big frozen landscape, and there's like a dragon skeleton like between two peaks. Like it's cool. Like it looks really cool. It doesn't sound cool though. Like this is one of the first times where it doesn't not match the cover artwork at all.
Yep. Well, it's because you got awesome cover artwork that looks like it ought to be out of some Swedish melodic death metal band, and you get more of the same from Obituary. I mean, it just, I don't know, man. It just, you would think after you come back from an 8-year hiatus, you got some new ideas and you're gonna be kicking ass and taking names, and no, they played it safe. They tried to stick with the formula the best they could, and they're like, hey, motherfuckers, we're back.
Right. Yeah, just like real quick.
And I'm like, well, you're back, and you brought nothing else with you to the table. So yeah, I'm not back. That's that's the disappointing thing for me. I'm sure that there were Obituary fans just shitting their pants because they're like, oh my God, it's like they never left.
Yeah.
And that's what they made this album for, was for those people. And they didn't make it for me wanting to see what their growth was. You know, I'm not the casual fan, obviously. I'm not the normal. I like to see the growth. Most people want to have more of the same because that's the shit that they love. That's what they're comfortable with. They want more of the same because they know what they like. They don't want Obituary to make something else. So, yeah. So I get that part of it. It's just frustrating for me because I'm like, you know, whenever you there's the rumors, and then all of a sudden, you know, you have this big band with a lot of people, you know, you get people who were big in the metal scene for, you know, for quite a bit of some of the early years. You know, you want something of substance that just shows you that they've upped their game, and that these new guys, they can't fuck with us because, you know, we're the old, you know, we made this happen, and watch our shit and we'll show you how it's done. And that just didn't happen. So that's, for me, was probably part of the disappointment, you know, because it's not like these guys were just an Obituary. I mean, we're talking about a lot of different bands that were, you know, like 6 Feet Under and stuff like that. You know, yes, I don't like Barnes's vocals. I get it. But, you know, there's just nothing. Well, actually, I don't think Alan was back on this one, was he? Was he? No, yeah, he was. He was. Okay.
Yeah, he was. He
okay.
Left. Yeah, so this is still the classic Obituary.
Okay.
In name only.
Yes. So, just disappointed, man. And that's the best way for me to put it. I'm just disappointed.
Would somebody... Okay, is everybody done yawning?
No.
Sorry, it's as soon as this record hit, dude.
All I have to say is, dude, if you're yawning, don't answer the question.
He wasn't trying to.
Yeah.
He just yawned.
I just yawned.
Yeah, I'm tired.
All right. Would anybody like to release the Executioner for me?
I mean, I'd like to, but the band's like not letting me, dude. I'm like in a Florida swamp, and I'm up to my kneecaps in mud, and I just can't get out of it. It's like super boring mud. I just can't do it. The Executioner might be there somewhere, but like I'm never gonna be able to let him out because I'm trapped in a swamp of mediocrity.
2007, Executioner's Return. This is not good.
Is it though?
This is bad. This sounds like somebody took a cassette tape that was recorded in 1985, ripped it using an analog cassette player, tried to master it in Pro Tools, and then release it to the masses. It does not sound good. It sounds flat and less than produced, not even unproduced. That's how bad it sounds. I want it to be good, and I'm sure a fan of the band is going to be happy with it. But I'm a fan of the band sometimes, and this record is just not okay.
Well, I think there's a reason why this one's not on a lot of streaming services.
Because it sucks.
Yes.
I mean, Back from the Dead is. Like,
Was this released independently, or is this still on Roadrunner?
Candlelight.
So it's a different label.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't think that matters, though.
No, I mean, because Candlelight's got people like Emperor on it. So, I mean, it's not like it's not a tiny label. It's just that it's, they were. They're, it's just, I think they're British. Is it British? I think they're British. Is that right? Candlelight?
Oh, yeah, I think they might be based in Britain. I can find out.
Okay. Well, I know Spinefarm owns them now. Owns the rights because Candlelight doesn't exist anymore. But
Candlelight was UK. I couldn't remember if it was that or it was a European country. But yeah, it's UK for Candlelight.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So it's it just sucks. I mean, I don't know. It's not a good album.
All right, we're moving on.
No, I'll give it. I got one little thing to say. They tried a lot harder on this record than they did on Frozen in Time. Like Frozen in Time was definitely like, it was very aptly named album. Let's put it that way. Because they basically were saying it. They're like, we're fossils, and maybe they were trying to make that statement in like a cute way, like, we're fossils. We don't conform to what newer music trends are or whatever. But Executioner's Return, they really, really were trying to go back because, like, I can hear it. I can hear it in the riffs that they were trying really hard to go back to that sound. And there's a couple of little moments where it shines, but for the most part, it largely fails. Because let's be honest, Obituary really isn't that creative of a band. And so at this point, we're almost starting to hear recycled versions of older, better material.
Well, that's exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
So I mean, whenever you sometimes this happens. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. I mean, you got a band that's trying to make a living and they're trying to put stuff out. They're trying to, put out what works and what gets them cash. And it's, just not flowing for us.
And I can't stress enough how difficult it is to listen to these records in their entirety. Like what a chore that is.
It's not just that the record is the same over and over and over again. It's that most of the ideas are picture perfect copies of each other, but the ideas get worse over time, with a few exceptions here and there, but it's just not good.
If it was picture perfect, I would enjoy it more, but it's like crappy Polaroid versions or like a JPEG that's been shared like 18,000 times. Like it degrades in quality.
Yeah, it's like you took a pic of a pic of a pic. It keeps getting worse and worse and worse.
But I mean, I do see them trying. I see them trying to make that their make Executioner's Return like their comeback album.
Yeah, I mean, they even use their old name.
Yeah,
I mean, I guarantee you that was done from a sales aspect, just to say, hey, this is harkens back to what we were.
Hey guys, 1987 called. They said Executioner put out a new album.
But they didn't really.
They really didn't.
But they did not.
You ready for Darkest Day?
I mean, I guess. Like, whatever.
Yeah, just get it over with.
Did you guys like Executioner's Return?
Nope.
Define like.
Did you enjoy the fact that a band called Obituary put out an album called Executioner's Return in 2007?
I mean, I liked that it was over.
So how do you feel about Darkest Day?
I think Darkest Day is actually better. We're being really mean. Darkest Day is a continuing attempt to try to find what the ingredients were. It's kind of like, have you ever met somebody in your life that for whatever reason you've known them for like, they're like in their mid 30s, but they still ask you really weird questions sometimes, like, hey, I got my first paycheck this week and I realized that it's Friday, but I didn't get paid for Monday through Thursday this week. And you're like, well, no, dude, everybody knows that you don't get paid for the week that you got paid for, everybody understands that. How did you get this far as a worker without realizing that? I feel that way about Obituary in the sense of it's almost like it's almost happenstance that those early records were as good as they were. And even the band doesn't really understand what makes Obituary good. So it's kind of like, it's almost like George Lucas in that regard too, where George Lucas didn't understand what fans liked about Star Wars. So he kept making movies that had a lot of elements in there that were from the original Star Wars movies, but they weren't the elements that the people were actually grasping onto. And I think largely that's the problem with Obituary is they needed like 3 or 4 albums to kind of figure this out and hammer it home while still trying to appeal to the fan base the best that they could. So this record is actually a step up from Executioner's Return. It's like a little gleam, like a little silver lining. Like maybe if you just give them another album, this might be okay.
Yeah, I would say that George Lucas doesn't give a fuck what the fans think, and he just did what he wanted to do.
Not this year, yeah, but...
So I could see that also being a thing with Obituary. They're like, you know what? This is what we like. This is what we're going to play, and we'll throw a couple of bones fans' way, because that's what Lucas did. And I could see them totally be in that perspective, too, of like, yep, you know what? Throw a couple bones, get you excited, but fuck you, this is what we want to do. I mean, it's what we always harped on with In Flames. They're like, yep, we're going to throw you a couple bones, but fuck you, this is our band. We're going to do this how we want. We don't care if you like it or not.
Yep. Somebody thought Evil in the Closet was a good idea.
Me.
Yeah, you did. Well, one guy liked it. We did an internet poll. One guy voted yes, call the song that.
Yep, that was the one vote, guaranteed.
Yep.
2014, Inked in Blood.
Well, it's a cool album cover.
It's a new album.
It sounds better from a production standpoint, but it sounds like the exact same songs that were on the last record.
This thing is interesting. This was kickstarted actually.
Oh, was it?
But then was still put out on a label.
It was still on Candlelight, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I don't know if it was Candlelight or not.
No. They were on Relapse now.
It was Relapse.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they kickstarted it, and I don't really hate this one. Like I don't have the same venom for it, because I feel like somewhere in the middle of Darkest Day, they started showing signs of getting better. You know, like they were actually back from the dead. This one has more pace. This one has more extremity. It has more death metal overall than what we've had. What we had in those kind of middling albums. The problem with it though is you get fast badass Obituary for about 3 songs. And then it just kind of goes back to the way it was before. Yep,
it's the cock tease that we so infamously talk about.
I love that there's even a song called Back on Top. Like they really thought, like everybody's all about it now. I like the production on this record though. I do like the leads. I like and I'm using so here's the issue. This is kind of Stockholm syndrome, right? Because I'm kind of beat down now to the point where if you do anything that's remotely positive, you know, it's like somebody kidnaps you and you live in their basement, and then 3 months go by of them just doing horrible things to you, and then they bring you a cheeseburger, and you're like, well, you know what? Maybe they're not so bad after all. I think that's kind of what I'm experiencing on Inked in Blood.
By the way, Geoff, did you find that 10-piece I left you outside the box?
What?
Gentlemen, I want to congratulate you. You've listened to all the Obituary albums except for Obituary 2017. For the most part, it all sounded the same. And in most cases, it didn't sound very good. How do we feel about the newest release?
There's a glimmer of hope, actually. I'm gonna say that. That's how I feel.
I agree. I think this is what Frozen in Time should have been.
Yeah, I mean, this is their best stuff in 20 years, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, the pace, like that song "Brave," just comes out of the gates swinging. They have a new lead guitarist on this record.
Yeah, Kenny Andrews. Wait, no, he was in Inked in Blood.
Was he on Inked in Blood as well?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, he's awesome on this record.
Yes, he is.
This might be a case of, it's almost like a James Murphy situation again, where you're taking Obituary, but you're adding in that crucial lead guitar work that has basically been mindless. You know, every Obituary album has solos, it has leads, but a lot of the time they're just noise. They don't go anywhere. They don't have any progression. This is the first time in, like Geoff said, in 20 years that I've listened to a solo and been like, dude, that thing was a ripper. Like it goes a little cat strangly, but overall it's actually kind of melodic in places and it works.
Yes, it does. And that's what we're here for. We're not, I mean, I've already made it pretty clear that not a fan of John's vocals. So I'm here for the music and not the vocals, and the music is good this time. I did enjoy myself. I did not feel like I was being tortured. It's funny, we were talking about being tortured with some of those guitars on previous records, and one of those guitarists was actually from Iced Earth that we were tortured with from Iced Earth.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I don't feel good that it took 20 years for the band to put out a record that sounds like what they did well in the early 90s. But
I mean,
they
you're not
eventually got there. They eventually did more of the thing that we like, that sounds good, that works for them.
This is the kind of record that I would expect to come out if, let's say, Obituary had broken up after World Demise and they had spent all this time off, all the way up to 2017, and then they put this record out. This is the type of comeback that this band needed. We didn't need to get to album number 10. We didn't have to get to album number 10 to reach that. Like, we had to suffer through so much bad stuff. And in a lot of cases, a lot of the bands we talk about is, they'll make a comeback, and suddenly a lot of the times the comeback material can almost be better than the original material. That's not the case with Obituary. The only band I can really think of to compare them to as far as their progression goes, not in sound, but as far as their career, is Diamond Head, where that band meandered. They had a couple of really great releases early on, and then they just kind of meandered for 20, 30 years. And then they wake up one morning and remember who they are, and they play an amazing record. It's very much the same situation with Obituary, that they've just kind of wandered through successes. And that's really mean, but...
Final thoughts on Obituary. Dan.
I mean, listen to the first 4 records, but skip the third one, and you're fine. The Obituary self-titled is great. It might even be a good starting place for the band to let you know if you're really into this style. But I think that overall with Obituary, you've got 10 records and you don't have to own all of them. It's not essential listening. I would say the only album that they have that would be essential listening would be Cause of Death. Everything else you can kind of take it or leave it. Even some of the better albums. I liked World Demise, but I liked it as an Obituary record. A lot of these records, even the ones that I think are really good, are still only really good for Obituary. When you're looking at what I'm comparing it to, you start realizing that even maybe the successes aren't really amazing. So Obituary is very much the kind of band where they were classic once. They still continue because dudes got to eat. But overall, I could probably do without Obituary for the most part.
Geoff, what about you?
If Obituary was a baseball player, their batting average would be fan-fucking-tastic because it's at 400. I think 4 out of the 10 albums are good. 6 out of the 10 are passes for me. And truthfully, for the type of music we like, that just generally doesn't cut the mustard. So whenever they're on, I think it's kind of like what Dan had said at one point. It's kind of like, oops, we got lucky on that. Hey, let's try doing that again. And then that's when they fail. And I just want them to, I don't know, I'm hoping that now that they did a couple albums with the new studio, it's like Redneck Studio, I think is what the name of it is.
Yeah.
If they can kind of get a groove, they found a producer that can mesh them well, get them to sound good. Because I actually, like I said, I think there's light at the end of the tunnel with the self-titled. I really do like the album Obituary. It's my 4th favorite, but I don't mind listening to it, and I do want there to be Obituary because I do like some of that ridiculously noodling guitar solo shit every once in a while, and I kind of enjoy that part of it with Obituary. I don't care for John's voice. I've said that over and over and over again. But yeah, the 4 albums that I do like, I do want to keep around. Unfortunately, the other 6, I really have no interest in them at all.
I think Obituary is one of those bands that you want to like because some old school metalhead who has been listening to thrash metal for 50 years and has been sitting at the end of the bar has been telling you that Obituary is the shit, man. You got to listen to Obituary. You're not a real fan of thrash metal if you don't listen to Obituary. Some of it is good. Some of it works for what it is, but for the most part, it does not succeed. It fails. It's boring. I want to like it because there are parts of it that I really like. The most recent release is promising. So if there's a new record by Obituary in the future, I'm going to listen to it. I'm going to give it a chance. But I don't think the band is as valuable to the genre as a lot of people would make you believe. Dan, what's your album of the week?
Sorry, I lost it. My album of the week this week is A Thought Crushed My Mind by Blindside, because it's got energy. It's got energy, unlike Obituary.
Geoff, what about you?
It is Becoming the Enemy by Imonolith. One of my favorite vocalists, John from Threat Signal, is the lead singer of this new band. So definitely should check it out. And for Joe, Avatar's vocalist guests on one of the tracks. So I think you'd dig that.
I'm sure it sounds as mediocre as it does on those records.
Oh, damn.
For me, it's Houdini by the Melvins.
Nice.
I started to make Melvins comparisons because of all the open D chug songs that Obituary has, and the Melvins did it a lot better. Take us out, DFT.
If you've ever been listening to this podcast and thought to yourself, well, yeah, guys, you screwed up. You talked about Obituary, and you should be talking about, like, Neo-Obelisk blah, blah, blah. Let us know. You know, we used to have Geoff around every week to let us know, but you know, he is, you know, in a ditch with a shovel, so you know, he's trying to dig his way out of it. But we need your guys' suggestion, and there's a lot of ways that you guys can give us those suggestions. You can send us an email at danandjoeshow@gmail.com. You can visit us on Facebook at facebook.com/discography discussion. You can tweet at us at discussmetal or at discussmetaldan or at discussmetaljoe. You can always talk to us on our Discord server. There'll be a link in the show notes that you can click on and join the chat there. You can also get an awesome Discography Discussion hoodie right now for $25 at the Discography Discussion merch store. So check that out. Help support the podcast monetarily. And if not, just keep sharing those episodes. We really appreciate it.
And on that note, this has been episode 164 of Discography Discussion. Thank you for listening. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at discussmetal. Subscribe to our podcast everywhere you listen to podcasts, including Google Play, Apple Podcasts, and Stitcher. Visit discussmetal.com for all things discography discussion. And please send questions and comments to danandjoeshow@gmail.com. If you are not a patron, you can become one at patreon.com/discussmetal. We have some sweet perks.
Give me your money.